From your local election headquarters, this is Eyewitness Newsmakers with your hosts, Jayne and Bugda and Andy Mehalshick.
Hello and welcome to Newsmakers from your local election headquarters. I'm Andy Mehalshick.
And I'm Jayne Bugda. Today we are switching our focus to the Pennsylvania State Senate and the race in the 22nd District. This is the matchup between Democratic incumbent Senator John Blake and Republican candidate Frank Scavo. To be fair, we asked each of the candidates the same questions concerning issues that are important on the state level and allowed them a minute wrap to address the voters.
Our political analyst David Yonki, Dr. David Sosar, and attorney Chris Cullen will then weigh in on that race. Information on these candidates can be found on pahomepage.com. Newsmakers from your local election headquarters begins after this. And welcome back to Eyewitness Newsmakers from your local election headquarters. Andy Mehalshick along with Jayne Bugda. And our candidate for this segment is Senator John Blake, incumbent Democrat in the 22nd District, which encompasses for the most part most of Lackawanna, all of Lackawanna County. Senator Blake, first of all, thank you for being here today.
Thank you, Andy. Thank you, Jayne. Appreciate the opportunity.
We want to start with the first question is tell the folks at home a bit about your background and what you're all about.
Well, married for 33 years to my beautiful wife, Louise. We have two children. Our son, Vince, graduate of the Rochester Institute of Technology, doing very well for himself, living in Cambridge, Massachusetts. And our daughter, Katie, is a graduate of Pace University in New York City, and she works for the Wright Center in Scranton, and in her spare time is a tremendous lead singer for a cover band and wedding band, a premier band out of northeastern Pennsylvania, Lightweight. I'm a graduate of Villanova University. I have an MSW from Marywood University and an MBA in finance from the University of Scranton. And I've been in the Pennsylvania State Senate for 8 years.
And Senator, tell us a little bit about what is your top priority and what continues to be your top priority.
Well, jobs and economic security for the people I represent. And when I say that, I don't only mean for working families, I mean also for our seniors and for our persons with disabilities. We have an obligation in state government to improve the quality of life for the people we represent and for the people of Pennsylvania, and that's what I focus on every day.
And Senator, one of the hot button topics that it seems like is talked about every year for years and years, reforming property tax, state income taxes. What's your take on reforming or maybe getting rid of the property tax?
So a couple things. And I know this debate very well. I've been in the thick of it for a couple of years as it relates to the so-called elimination of school property taxes. It's a very complex issue. It's not easily articulated in the short space of time that we have, but I would tell you that we have a crisis in terms of school property taxes in some locations of the state, but not statewide. The solution set really ought not be statewide. We really should focus the assistance that we can on the people who are most in need of it, fixed income seniors, retirement income households who can't keep up with the rising costs of providing a quality public education. But if we're going to do property tax reform, it has to be done responsibly. We have a constitutional obligation to guarantee a thorough, efficient public education. It has to be adequately funded to guarantee a new generation of citizens and voters. So we have to balance the responsibility, the constitutional obligation we have with providing a quality public education with being responsible about the tax burden that we place on our citizens. There are ways to fix this problem, but the issue that's been raised by Senate Bill 76 or House Bill 76, which is at the heart of this debate, is actually quite dangerous public policy. It's not good for public schools, and it's not good for taxpayers.
And Senator, do you support an oil and gas severance tax?
I do, and I voted for it several times on the floor of the Senate. We had a responsible severance tax that did pass the Senate with bipartisan support, but we couldn't get it in the House. I've said this since 2010, that the people of Pennsylvania need to be compensated for the volume of natural gas that's being extracted from the state. We are the only sufficiently endowed natural gas play in the entire nation that does not actually tax the volume of natural gas coming out. We don't want to put these companies out of business, but there's a way they would actually work with us to make sure that that tax was responsible and maybe linked to the market price of natural gas in a way that would be progressive.
And Senator, speaking about revenues, what is your opinion or your take on, there's been some talk about legalizing marijuana to generate revenue for the state?
So, I just came through a long debate on the medical marijuana. legalization, and believe me, that was something to witness down in Harrisburg, because there was an awful lot of opposition early on, but we all kind of came around that we thought we could get it right. Part of the way we got it right is by going to other states to find out where they may not have gotten it right and learn from those mistakes and make sure that what we did in Pennsylvania was going to be absolutely the best statute that we can write, and I think we've gotten there. The issue of recreational marijuana, I can probably get there, but it would depend on how we got there. There are some states that went kind of without a lot of deliberation right into this space because they were trying to raise revenue, and I think that's irresponsible. I think there's got to be some issues associated with public safety, particularly children, vulnerable younger children. And in all honesty, we have a problem with the federal designation of marijuana as a Schedule I narcotic. That's a problem with respect to the financial services industry. It's a problem with respect to, you know, the discretion of the state. It ought to be resolved at the federal level so that states would have the discretion to go in and do the kind of research and do the kind of deliberative analysis we have to do in order to get it right. I can get there, but it depends on how we get there.
Isn't it always an important question on everyone's mind is about bringing jobs to our area and then keeping them here? Mm-hmm. What is your idea?
I'm really, the long and short of it is there's one thing that will almost guarantee that you can do that, and that's skilled labor. It's the most important thing. That's why our investment in our schools at both the K through 12, you know, the community college, higher education, and our state related is so important, because that puts Pennsylvania in the optimum position to convince employers that they can find the skilled labor they need if they do business here and they locate here. I've been involved in career readiness really since the beginning of my service in the Senate. We've done some great things with our K through 12 schools and putting career and work and education curriculum into them, and we've done a good job, I think, in the workforce development space with respect to federal money. I'm telling you, I served for many years as acting secretary of the Department of Community and Economic Development. When I sat across the table from business, they wanted an answer, one answer. Can I get the skilled labor I need? That's the way we bring jobs here, and I'm bullish on our prospects going forward in northeastern Pennsylvania. I really am. And
one last question, Senator, if I can, if you can look at that camera and tell the voters why they should re-elect you to the state Senate. My work ethic and my voting record reflects the expectations and the sensibility of the people I represent. I've probably brought close to $185 million of state investment back to the district because I know the menu, and I've been in that space of community and economic development for my whole career. And I'm basically transparent as a public official and completely accessible to the people I represent. I feel that my work ethic, again, and my voting record is really right for the people of the 22nd District, and I hope that I've earned their trust to be able to serve in this office for another term and to really enjoy the privilege of serving them as best as I can.
Well, Senator John Blake, we want to thank you for joining us today. You're watching Newsmakers from your local election headquarters. If you'd like to learn more about Senator John Blake, check us out on pahomepage.com or under the Newsmakers and local election headquarters link, and we'll be back right after this.
Sandy Mehalshick along with Jayne and Bugda, and our guest on this segment is Frank Scavo, Republican candidate in the 22nd Senatorial District, which encompasses much, if not all, of Lackawanna County. Frank, thanks for being here today.
You're welcome, Andy. Welcome, Jayne.
Let's start off with the most basic question. Tell the folks at home a little bit about Frank Scavo.
All right, well, I have a beautiful wife named Karen, 2 children. My daughter's at Temple, and my son is currently going to graduate from the Old Fort School District, where I am a school board director. I believe this is a very critical election because it addresses, on my part, the fact that I would like to eliminate your school district property taxes and attract new industry and jobs to the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania for your children and our future. So, critical election, guys, and I believe that this point in history in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, we're ready to make some profound changes.
So, Frank, tell us a little bit about what is your top priority?
Well, my top priority is to interview for this job. This job's about $100,000 a year, so you need somebody that's going to produce results for you. The top priorities are responding to the people's needs, and right now, when I campaign and I knock on people's doors, they're telling me, Mr. Scavo, it's property taxes from my school district. That's the big bill. We need the senior citizens want elimination. They say it's no longer fair. How long will they continue to be punished? So I agree with them, because at some point I'll be a senior, and also my mom, she's a senior, and I just see that they need to continue working to keep up with their property taxes, and I don't think that's fair.
And Frank, you know, we talk about property taxes. It's almost like the weather. People talk about it, but nothing is done. First of all, why do you think nothing has been done as of yet, and how will you make that happen? Because many candidates say I'm going to eliminate or reform property taxes, but it's the same template in Harrisburg year in and year out. What will you do to make it change?
That is the best question, because here's the backstory. This came up for a vote, and it was a tied vote. The vote was 24-24. So Lisa Baker, a good Republican senator, and John Udicek, a good Democrat senator from Luzerne County, both voted to eliminate the property taxes. If John Blake from Lackawanna County had voted like they did to eliminate property taxes, along with Mario Scavello, we wouldn't have property taxes right now for your school district. So in asking that question, what can be done? I can guarantee you that, seeing it as unfair as property taxes are, I will vote to eliminate them. So ideally, the vote would now be 25-23, and this would pass as soon as January 2019 if we got this out of the Senate committee and brought it to a vote. So that's how close we are to getting property tax elimination. A lot of people say it'll never happen. We were there. We were on the precipice of eliminating this punishing tax for all, but it was upset by one vote from Lackawanna County.
Well, another question on a lot of people's mind is the oil and gas severance tax.
Yes.
Do you support it?
Here's what I say. Right now we're charging rates that are somewhat like Texas. That funds that are charged from those drillers in the form of an impact fee stay in the district. Now, I know that people that are tax and spenders want to bring all that money to Harrisburg and then send it back out. But I say, look, if those people are being impacted in those areas that have the natural gas as an asset, you may be able to increase taxes somewhat, a little bit more, but I'm in favor of those taxes staying where the people are suffering to fix their roads and infrastructure, and then maybe to make us equal to other states. We might be able to tweak that tax up, but I'm not in favor of sending all the tax revenue to Harrisburg to be, it's a power play. So, and it could be also that we keep that impact fee, the severance tax, where it is. So it all depends on how much the market will bear.
Another revenue source that's been talked about is legalizing marijuana, taxing it, and bringing those revenues to the state coffers. What's your opinion of that?
I'd immediately move to decriminalize marijuana. We spend entirely too much of our law enforcement resources on small drug infractions like marijuana. Plus, people get records, and it's very hard to get employment once you have a drug case record. Having said that, decriminalization is not legalization. So I would look at the trends and see if decriminalizing caused more auto accidents, if it caused more healthcare issues, because the tax, as Auditor General Eugene D. Pascal states, that marijuana legalization and the tax it will produce is about $385–400 million. Now, with the way Harrisburg spends, that's a drop in the bucket. So I'm not sure if that small amount of taxation will equate to the amount of expenses that the average citizen will have to bear in form of maybe higher insurance premiums for cars because there'll be more accidents. I'm not sure how that will bear out, but decriminalization, yes. Legalization, possible. We would look at the cost, the economic cost to our residents.
And another important question, of course, jobs. How do we bring more jobs to our region, and how do we retain them?
Jane, that's a great question. You know, I've seen KOZ zones where companies move in, and when that KOZ zone expires in 10 years, the companies move out. Well, you know, the legislation that Senator Blake voted against was called Senate Bill 76. And Senate Bill 76 for seniors and businesses eliminates all of that school district property tax. But here's what happens. When we eliminate that crushing property tax for businesses, large pharmaceutical companies from New Jersey, from New York, companies from Massachusetts, companies from Ohio will look at Pennsylvania and want to relocate here because we'll be only the 7th state in the nation that doesn't have a property tax. There are 6 states that don't have a property tax right now. which, by the way, neither does Washington, D.C., so those guys are smart. They don't tax themselves, their properties. But to gain jobs, how else can we spur economic growth in Pennsylvania without giving everybody a government job? Well, let private industry do it. We remove those crushing property taxes, and those companies will relocate, and in fact, we may be able to lower corporate net incomes. We may be able to lower income taxes and sales taxes because of the growth that we will have. This is 22nd century thinking. There's no other way that I've ever seen, and I've been around for quite a long time. In private industry, I spent 30 years with Keystone Automotive in corporate management. But there's no other way that I've ever seen, and I've asked state senators and state legislators, have they ever created jobs for anyone? And they really can't say yes, because they haven't created a job. They've taken our tax dollars and given it to somebody. But when private industry relocates to the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, it'll be a resurgence like when we drove the Industrial Revolution, except a lot cleaner. We won't be doing it with coal, we'll be doing it with jobs.
Frank, one last question. 1 minute to go. Look in that camera and tell the voters why they should support Frank Scavo.
This is a critical election. You hear this about every election. But in this election, Harrisburg is ready for new leadership. Harrisburg is ready for new ideas, and what I will do is, listen, I've had my differences with Senator Bob Mello, we know that, but I see the good that Senator Bob Mello has done with the Commonwealth Medical College. I promise you that I will leverage our votes of Northeast Pennsylvania, even form the Northeast Pennsylvania Freedom Caucus with our other senators, and make sure that Northeast Pennsylvania gets a better deal than we have gotten in the past, because you'll be paying for it. Like I said, this job pays about $100,000 a year. You need somebody that's going to go down there and not just name a state cookie or a state flower. You need somebody that's going to fight for you in Harrisburg, and I am that candidate.
Well, Frank Scavo, Republican candidate for State Senate in the 22nd District, thank you for joining us today.
You are most welcome.
For more information on all of our candidates, go to pahomepage.com or under the Newsmakers and local election link. Thank you for joining us, and we'll be right back.
And we are joined in this segment with our political analyst, Attorney Chris Cullen, Dr. David Sosar, and Dave Yonki. We are taking a close look at analyzing the race for the 22nd District of Pennsylvania between Republican incumbent John Blake, or Democratic incumbent John Blake, and Republican challenger Frank Scavo. Let's start with Dave Yonki. Dave, how do you see this race shaping up?
What a race of contrast. Frank Scavo has been in the private sector, private business all of his life. John Blake pretty much has been on the taxpayer dime for his entire career. And so you have a little bit of contrast here in terms of the two men that are running. Blake won, of course. He succeeded Robert Mello. The big issue here is going to be property tax relief. And again, Frank Scavo is running for the primary purpose of the Property Tax Reform Act, House Bill 76. John Blake in the Senate committee was the person who stopped that from even getting to the legislature. So that's a big issue. Property tax reform, whether it's in the purest form, as House Bill 76 is going to be, or what Blake and the Democrats want, is going to be a big issue. And it has to be juxtaposed with what's happening in the Scranton School District. There's a lot of people who don't mind paying property taxes for education. But when it comes to, some of the major corruption that we heard about recently, about the mechanic who was fixing cars and things like that, this is going to be a hot issue. So whether Scavo is going to prevail with the low Republican registration and, the powerhouse that, the Mid-Valley Democrats are with Blake, it's too soon to tell. But they're both putting up a fight.
Yeah, this will be a fun one to watch. And I do agree with you. I think the property tax is very important. I think coupled with that, you've got to also put in the educational issue itself. And this is from the top on down. Frank Scavo is taking a much stronger look at obviously the Republican and school board member that he was for 10 years or more, I guess, then, and what should be done about education. And regarding the taxes and how the money obviously should be spent, John Blake has obviously his own ideas and the Democratic viewpoint of what's going to happen in terms of education and the funding for education. So it really is a contrast here.
Chris?
It's been the the adopted policy of this Commonwealth and upheld many times by the state Supreme Court that education is a basic public requirement in our society. So the funding of education has always been an issue. The bottom line is exactly what Dave said about Senate Bill 76. That becomes an issue as to how you fill that revenue gap. If you take property taxes away as to school districts, et cetera, how do you fill that revenue thing? And I think that's where the tension really is. I don't think there's any basis to say that no one's in favor of some type of property tax reform. And you're absolutely right on the issue of people will pay for public purpose and public policy goals if that's where the money is going. When you see this minor league, nickel and dime, almost systemic corruption that's rooted as a concept of acceptance and entitlement in the local political structures, you find it very disheartening. I pay taxes, I have a house, I pay property taxes, and I understand the importance of doing that as a civic obligation, but I also understand the impact of the issue of how that money is spent. And I do think that Senator Blake is in a formidable position because of that Mid-Valley Democrats and because of his time period in government and because it's a Democratic district. It's as simple as that.
And Scavo ran in 2010 against Bob Mello, and that didn't work out that well. But again, you know, when you're talking about property taxes, you know, there should be like an equal playing field, and there's a lot of people who feel that there should be a consumption tax so that everybody, you know, would have to pay, not necessarily property owners.
Exactly.
Well, gentlemen, we want to thank you for weighing in on our race today, and for more information on the race in the 22nd Pennsylvania Senate District, go to pahomepage.com. For Andy Mehalshick, for Chris Cullen, Dr. David Sosar, and David Yonki, I'm Jayne Bugda. We thank you for watching Newsmakers from your local election headquarters, and we'll talk again next time.